Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're doing a poem called Parents by Paul Durcan. It is on both curriculums for ordinary and higher English, so please bear with me as I go through it in detail. I plan to try and analyze it step by step and maybe convey the deeper meaning, the message of this poem itself. If you have any questions, please do not forget to put them down below in the comments. Alright, so bear with me. First things first, this is a poem about caring for a newborn child and how it is scary and beautiful at the same time. What occurs is that merely to hold such a tiny person in your arms, a baby, is scary. The issue is that communication is primitive, basic, and parents are very much all the time worried and about the kid not knowing what they're doing, checking on them. And by the way, when I'm talking about kids, I'm talking about like babies. I'm not talking about like 5-year-olds. I'm talking about like months olds, like when you can't communicate with them and stuff. So this poem is exactly about that. Paul Durcan is attempting to articulate the strangeness of this experience of a new independent life in the house for the parents and also for the child. The key word for, if I had to choose one word to describe this poem, I would say communication. So, how parents communicate with the newborns and how the newborns communicate with the parents is very much difficult to comprehend because there is a language barrier, there is a barrier of communication in general. You can't get to know what the baby wants and vice versa. The baby is always looking up at the parents as it's laying down in a bed, not knowing how to communicate with them. So the parents are always vigilant and like they're just worried about if maybe the baby wants something and they can't, express their feelings and thoughts. So what's his face? Durcan makes it more strange still. He exaggerates the barriers between parents and child for the sake of poetry. He uses the sea metaphor to constitute this barrier. So how do I explain this to you in the best way possible? Is as the baby lays in the bed and the parents are above, standing, watching the baby sleeping, he's saying that there's a sea separating them both, separating one from another. So he's trying to use the sea as a metaphor to constitute such barrier. Now she is under the sea. So we know that the baby is a female. It's a girl. It's under the sea, and they're above it, and they're not connected because the sea in the middle separates the parents from the girl. This is not a totally unconnected leap of the imagination, as the child has had a type of fish-like existence in the womb. So maybe that's one of the reasons that the poet Durcan uses the sea as a metaphor. It's not only randomly chosen, but because the child was already in a sea in the womb of the mother, not only because Durcan felt like using sea as a metaphor. He uses this metaphor to explore the different perspectives of parents and child as viewed from above and beneath the water. And it's very important, and I'll talk to you why, another reason why he chose the metaphor sea as well. So, this dramatic opening line, shocking because of his suggestions of death rather than new life, sets the scene of the notion of the strangeness of this experience. First shock over, it does have an element of truth as the child has come from the sea of the womb. This is the first point that I mentioned. Let's first consider the experience from the parents' perspective. Now, they feel, as it says, estranged from her. She was inside one of them, and now she's outside both of them, a separate being, and unable to communicate her thoughts and feelings in sleep. They cannot reach her, cannot access her, and it is as if they are, and I quote, locked out of their own home. If she looked up, she would see their mouths open. Is this in awe of this new life or in confusion? Their foreheads are furrowed, And does this suggest worry, or are they merely thinking, processing information about the newborn girl, trying to understand her and this entirely new situation? And I'm not talking about parents who already had a child. I'm talking about parents who they have their first child and they don't know what to do, and that extreme confusion, and like you don't know, you always seek help from others and people who have had children before and experience and stuff like that. So through the night, stranded, they stare. Stranded, the word choice of stranded that Durcan uses suggests that they have no option but to be there. Such is the strength of the parent-child bond. To remain through the night is extreme, though, an indication of the intensity of their feelings. They're worried and they don't want to let her go. They're just standing there the entire time watching her. Mothers are associated with such thing. They always stand there and watch what the baby is doing all the time, just to make sure that nothing happens or whatever. They're overly protective, and this is the message that Durcan is trying to convey. Now, going back to the metaphor of the sea, if she looked up through the sea, she would see pursed up orifices of fearful fish, a grotesque and frightening image. The world must be very strange, and indeed frightening to a new child. Sometimes they get frightened by an accustomed face. It is referred to as making strange. I'll explain. Their big ears are fins behind glass, because we're talking about a metaphor of sea, so this is like an extended metaphor. It is as if she sees the parents as fish in a tank, an upside down view of the world. Now, the distortion of the view that the baby has, there's some truth to it. I mean, if you've ever swum, and I believe you have, and if you're under the sea and you try to look above, you like have this distorted view of the sky, or if a person is watching you from above, you'll have a distorted view of that person. And there's some truth to this, because babies do not develop clear, focused vision for many months. So truthfully, babies are actually seeing the parents in a very distorted manner. So the metaphor of the sea is a perfect example of Durcan's poetic usage of poetic techniques in this sense. So not only is her vision distorted, but her vocal communication is also ineffective. And it says in the poem, and in her sleep she is calling out to them, Father, Father, Mother, Mother, but they cannot hear her. So Robert Frost, through this, is trying to provide for us how complex the lives of parents and their children are at young ages of the babies. The poem attempts to convey the strangeness of having and being a newborn child. So it looks from both perspectives, from the perspectives of the parents and the perspective of the baby below. So there's a sea that separates them both, and it analyzes both perspectives, as I just said. The parents feel themselves excluded from her world, and she has a distorted view of theirs. So we analyze both views, and the central metaphor of the sea is used as a barrier to sound and vision, just like in real life, because when you're under the sea, you can't see properly who's above it, and you cannot even hear them properly as well. This is a most unusual poem, but one that carries real insights into the helplessness of parents as they look at their sleeping child, which is true, because, as I said, when you have a newborn, you can only be there for them and guess what they want, but communication is almost impossible to achieve at a very, very young age. So overall, this is a very, very weird, strange poem by Paul Durcan, but in my opinion, it is very much about communication and opposite views from parents and children. So we can also talk about the relationships, or group this poem with other poems about the relationships between parents and their children, like the other poem called Sport by the same poet. It's also about father and a son. But anyway, this is basically it for this poem, and there is nothing else that I could tell you that may help you out so far as I know. So in case you guys have any questions, as I said at the beginning of this video, please do not hesitate to just comment down below, and I'll be willing to answer all your questions. Thank you very much, and have a good day.